I'll tell you what, Max, I'm ready for the day.
Is that right?
Yeah, man. I got a pocket full of rocks, a heart full of joy, and a head full of dreams. Let's go. Let's do this.
What do you got a pocket full of rocks for, Minnie?
You know why I got the pocket full of rocks.
It's midnight madness, time to break the ice. Late night with the icebreakers, slice of paradise. When stars collide and truths unfold, no script too rigid, no tales to hold. The icebreakers, yeah, we're breaking through late night conversations. Perspectives new, from laughs to deep talks, we'll keep it real. Icebreakers after dark, that's the deal.
And welcome to the show. So, today we have my guest cousin, maybe even cousin wife, I don't know, Brian. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
So, you are the Icebreaker producer.
Yes, very much.
And so, how did you get your start in video?
Well, I got my start first as a commercial artist. I did a little bit of video stuff back in college, but didn't really get into it until a previous job I had. I was helping out our videographer there and helping make some graphics and things, and kind of got interested in it. And then after that, I got a job at another company, and that's what I do full time now.
Yeah, and you got into the drones, and
Yep.
They helped you get into that, or did you?
Yeah. They got in. They have a bunch of drones and stuff, and they asked me if I wanted to get my license as well, and took me a little bit, but yeah, I got it now, and yeah, it's been real fun.
Yeah, and I thought, I got into drones, not obviously at your level, just like a tiny little drone, but more into trying to make videos for my businesses to kind of highlight, like my Christmas trees, like wanted to fly around there. And that's also what killed it, because there's so many drone laws right now.
Well, where your Christmas tree stand is too, and knowing all the rules, now you're really close to the airport, and that makes it tough.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I mean, it's not that I would even go that high. And I always say it, I'm like, well, what would be, it'd be a bigger problem if I went so high that there was an issue with me hitting a plane.
Yeah.
That would probably be a bigger issue than my drone. That would mean that plane's pretty fucking low.
That's the problem is that, like, where we live, we're very close to an airport, and the airport's departure and when they land, the spots are very, very close to where we live and everything, so it can be very low. It's just part of the rules, because you know better, but not everybody knows better. So
that's fair. And I guess with the accessibility to drones and other technology now, kind of like how people are scared of AI so much.
Yeah, it's a lot too of, like, the people who, those knuckleheads who are shooting green lasers at airplanes and stuff, and getting in a really, really big doo-doo for doing that.
Yeah. Why would you, like, that's
I don't get it.
Yeah, you got to be a fucking idiot. Like, what is the point? Kind of like graffiti.
Yeah.
Like, I get wanting to do art, but being like, I'm going to go do art where everyone can see and destroy other people's
buildings. And
don't get me wrong, I appreciate it. I love art.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, why would you bother, like, care that much that other people have to see to...
Yeah, it's... I've seen some graffiti that's very beautiful and things.
And, like, I watched this artist. His name's 1000. Have you heard of him?
No.
He's pretty cool. He started with graffiti art, I believe, and then he makes clothing. And when I first started getting into art, I would ask you questions all the time.
Yeah.
And then now I use Photoshop like a big boy. But back then I was using Affinity, which I still think Affinity is a great software. It's free, or not free, but I think I paid like $30 for a lifetime use.
Oh, okay.
like the Affinity Photo, which is Photoshop, and Affinity whatever what's the one that you use all
Illustrator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was pretty easy to use, but I would watch his videos on how he would draw and stuff like that. And he was more of a traditional artist, and he'd always spray paint stuff, and he would make paintings, and
Mm-hmm.
very, very talented. But he would get asked to go out and like spray paint people's walls and stuff for him, and he obviously get paid. But.
Yeah. You're getting permission then. That's a whole different thing. That's people who, like, we had a guy around here, this during the pandemic. He decided to write his name on everything he could.
Mhm.
And it wasn't graffiti, or it was graffiti, but it was art. It was just him writing his name over and over again, and he wrote it everywhere. And it's like, you don't expect to get in trouble for that. I mean, you still find his tags in places.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the weirdest thing too. It's like, yeah, you at some point, like if you write your name on something, even if it's your street name or your art name, whatever you want to call it, like sooner or later, people are going to figure it out. And I mean, let's face it, police aren't stupid.
No.
Like,
yeah, they figured it out pretty darn fast, because he used a pseudonym that he also did when he was a tattoo artist. So I think that's how they caught him.
So he was a tattoo artist.
I guess he was supposedly somebody who tried to do tattoo art.
Oh, okay.
And people in those circles knew who he was, and then kind of called him out, and that's how he got caught.
Well, and tattoo artists, I mean, they're usually, in my opinion, some of the best artists. Because,
there's great tattoo art out there.
Yeah, and like we're going to have some tattoo artists on the show, which I like that they all have their styles. When I was learning art, that was another thing. I would watch everyone's styles. Like I said, I found that 1000 guy from watching graffiti art.
Yeah.
Tattoo artists, I mean, that's a whole different thing. Like, I don't think I could do it.
Oh, God, no. I wouldn't dare. But yeah, there's all different styles. I mean, there's fine art, there's, oils, there's chalk, there's computer. I mean, you can be great in like one program on a computer, and you could stink on another.
Yep.
But it's just, if you like doing it, then do it. That's the great thing about art, is just have fun with it and enjoy it.
Well, and me and you have talked about how bad art teachers kind of ruined art for us, because as kids, me and you loved to draw.
Yeah.
And we loved comic books. Obviously, it was the 90s.
Yeah.
Comic books were huge.
But you also got to remember where we are, and you got to turn back the dial at least 7-10 years, because the mentality around here was still that comic books, that's for dum-dums. Unless you're a little kid, you shouldn't be looking at comic books.
Well, high school art teachers thought they were something pretty special back then too.
Yeah.
Which is at least my experience, but
even the middle school ones.
Yeah.
I mean, the two I had were really good at what they did. One was more of an architectural artist. He showed us perspective and things like that, which was great to learn, but it was mostly for buildings and stuff. And he was a very big fan of like Frank Lloyd Wright and things like that, which is great. It shows you a way to, do things in art. But if he can't get out of that circle, that bubble of his, to show like a kid who might be into like doing like comic book art or something more of a fine art thing, or, somebody who's maybe into painting instead of doing more of a technical sketch, it's not very helpful, to try to grow that artist.
I think we're talking about the same teacher, which I liked the teacher, but I got docked. I still have the picture. It was just a black and white picture of Yoda that I drew. It's upstairs in our cabinet. And I got docked because I took too long for it. I was working on it every day, all day. Like, it's not like I was fucking around.
Yeah, I know. I remember those too. Like, you're supposed to take a picture and you're supposed to do like a pencil sketch or something like that. And they'd usually go around, and there was one who would come in and he'd try to like show you, but he'd more or less take your work and start doodling on it. And like, he's trying to show you a technique. And sometimes it was fine, but sometimes it's like, can I have my thing back? I like to keep on working on it. But taking too long for art, that's ridiculous, because it's art. I mean, unless you're getting paid for it and you are on a deadline of some sort, and I guess technically you were, because the class was going to be doing stuff, but if you're going and it's like getting close, I think the teacher could give you a little bit of a break and go,
Well, now you're a professional artist. I mean, for the most part, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So, and then me with my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym. I mean,
Mhm.
pretty much we emulated and we copied what we liked, what style we liked.
Yeah.
And then we went forward and we grew it. Like in Jiu-Jitsu, like, yeah, I started doing a basic ass armbar.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have so many different ways that I found that my body works to get into it, and I can teach other people how to use their bodies. But if I wouldn't have emulated somebody else,
Yeah.
it would have been
Well,
different.
Yeah, and that's how you learn. It's like it's not downloaded in your brain. Any kind of skill, it's you have to learn it from somebody, and that means you're usually copying it from how they do it. And then later on, you might go, "Yes, this works, but I think it'd make it X easier if I did Y," and you can go from there
Exactly,
and make
yeah.
it your own.
But yeah, it was weird that was frowned upon.
Yeah, well, they always had a thing when you're like, when I did it, I would like find really cool covers of comic books and I'd want to make my own style of it. Like there was this really cool one of Magneto on it was like an X-Men Ultimate X-Men or no X-Men Unlimited. I think it was like number 3 or something. And it's just him and he's got his cape and he's holding up his hand and it looks like he's just in this like vortex of magnetism, but he didn't have his helmet on. It was just his head, you know, without the helmet. And I love that helmet. That was such a cool look. So I wanted to do a version but with his helmet on, and then maybe like, and then I put in the background the helmet again as like it was like the thing that made him, or it was the symbol of him. And they my teacher would look at it, but he's like, "Yeah, it's nice, but you're copying." It's like, no, I'm trying to get how they do it, how they shade, how, because you're doing like, especially comic book art, the shading's way different than you do like say a pencil or any kind of blending tool or any kind of other medium.
Well, and it was the 90s too. Comic book art. I mean,
oh yeah, everybody was collecting comic books.
Well, they're
back
collecting
then.
comics, but if any artist knows that comic books are probably one of the hardest mediums to get now, or back then especially.
Yeah.
Because all the artists were very creative, very new, and they were pushing their own thing. Like Todd McFarlane, how he finally redid Spider-Man's eyes.
Yeah. Well, that was a crazy thing I learned later because, you know, here it was like there was such a gap between knowing the process back then. It wasn't like you could go to like Michael's or something and get how to draw a comic book way or the manga way or anything like that. You had the how to draw the Marvel way, which was done back in like the 80s or it's like 70s or 80s. But if you couldn't get your hands on that, you really didn't have anything. And to understand that, one, how they do their process and how long they have too. I was so surprised later on finding out how long, you know, penciling and then inking and all this, the process of the whole thing takes. It's like months. And, you know, sometimes depending on the artist, it can take even longer than that. Sometimes because of their own ego. But other times it's just because that's just how fast they can go. They can only make a page a day or something like that. And then there's other people who are like, you know, like Jack Kirby, who was a freaking machine. He could get them out there all the time. It's amazing, but it's like everybody's got their speed.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah. And I mean, it depends. Like you said, cover art. Cover art is in itself its own animal because back then, too, that was, I mean, not unlike today. Like when I make these videos, I have to make what I think is at least an interesting thumbnail.
Yeah.
And basically, they're cover art.
Yeah. Because it entices you in.
Yep. You have to. Yep.
And then you go inside and go, oh, the art's not the same inside, but it still is. I remember that as a kid. You remember that? Like you see these crazy covers and you open it up and go, oh, it's not the same artist. That's not the, but it's like if the guy who did the cover did the insides, you know how long it would take them to do it? I mean, you got to look at Alex Ross and his process and his art. It is so detailed and stuff. It takes him so long, but it's always worth it. You've seen Alex Ross's stuff, right?
You'd have to remind me. I'm bad with the names. But
Marvels. He did Kingdom Come for DC.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. He's very realistic.
Very, very realistic. He's changed his style sometimes, just trying different things. Very cool. He did a Fantastic Four one not too long ago. A little bit different than what he usually does, but it was really cool looking. His what they call it. He had a small show that was going around to place. They had it at the Heritage Center here.
Really?
Yeah, it was in the spring.
This year?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow, I didn't even know about it.
Oh, dang, I'm sorry. I thought you knew.
I know. I can't keep up with what's going on. I'm always so busy.
But it was his Marvel work. It was his later Marvel work. But he was a lot of cover art he's been doing lately. And it's just, photorealistic, and it's just looking so nice. And you go up and you can look at all the things he did in that piece, and it's just amazing. But you also got to know, it's he had to take his time for those things.
No, I have some. It's not my favorite style for superhero art. It's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. He's probably one of the best artists, I would assume, that at least in the industry.
I really love his work. But it's also one of those things. I could never draw like that, but I really love it because it just looks so great. I remember seeing his Marvels, and then when he did Kingdom Come, and they were just so groundbreaking for the time because everything, you had, at the time, it was a lot of Jim Lee, McFarlane, all that kind of style, which is great style too.
Yeah,
but it's night and day between the two.
Well, and that's what I mean in our time for comics, that's what I was saying. There was so many different styles going on in comics. As kids, I would say comic books were probably the best art medium. Maybe not best, but most talented, different.
It was very accessible.
Yeah.
And it was very, you said there's such a variety because when we were first collecting, that's when Image broke out. And that's when both Marvel and DC kind of upped their game too. And it's also, unfortunately, that's also when the bubble burst on comic books too.
Well, they were doing some shit, but let's get to that in the next segment. Let's go to a commercial break, and then we'll talk some more comics, I think.
Okay.
All right, we'll be back.
Economic Frontier Signature Committee, who has never smoked marijuana, says about this new measure. He says this came together after the group became aware of another initiated measure that was circulating that did.
Thanks for the story, John. And I'm really glad to hear that Steve hasn't smoked any of that doobie smack reefer. I'd hate to see a doobie smack joint head in office. Anyhow, we have some breaking news from weather correspondent Danny Savage. He's out on the field. Let's check in. What you got for me, Danny?
O'Reilly Auto Parts. Now.
I mean, fuck. It was a good jingle. But I needed some weather. I was told there was an emergency. And then I get a jingle. Yeah, O'Reilly's is a great store. I love going there. But fuck. God damn, it was a hell of a jingle. Shit. We're back. Anyhow, so I'm here with my guest, Brian. producer, cousin extraordinaire.
Do
We
people
were,
even know that we're cousins?
I mean, I tell them.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like you can look at us and be like, oh, those guys are cousins. Like-
we're like distant cousins, which just
Yeah.
makes it funny because I think I'm technically close. Like your dad is my mom's cousin,
Yeah.
so
yeah, I
that
think
makes us
we're-
like third or fourth cousins or
I think we're
something.
third. Yeah. Yeah, but whatever.
Yeah.
You were the only family we had in town growing up.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was about it. I mean, and then you got me into all my nerddoms, which
Yeah.
we talked about during Dakota
Well,
Faye.
you had nerdums before.
Did I?
Well, you had Transformers and stuff. I mean, we're kid stuff. It was all the
Yeah.
kid stuff that we always had.
But I guess, yeah, I had Transformers. Yeah, all the kid stuff. But you brought me more like comic books. Everyone was into comic books. And we'll get back to that. But
Yeah.
But you got me into anime when we were in high school.
Mhm.
You tried D&D, Magic.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, I never did Magic.
Did
That was my other friends. They like
Oh.
Magic. I never could get into it.
Okay. Yeah.
I only had so much cash, and it was like that's like another hobby. I
Well,
could
Star Wars.
Star Wars
Wrestling.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, we used to watch wrestling all the time.
yep. And then did we watch? You came over and watched in high school, I'm sure, when I would watch like the NWO and all that.
Oh yeah, remember we used to play your games and stuff on PlayStation. We made up our own
Yeah.
characters.
No, it was Nintendo 64.
N64.
It
Yeah.
was that really good NWO versus WCW game.
Yep.
That was a good one.
That was a good one.
But before we get to video games, let's get back to comic books. So,
Yeah.
who would you say your favorite character of all time is?
Character? Boy, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, that could be changed. Like I said, I have my whole sleeve is comic books.
Yeah.
So it was mostly story arcs that got me. But,
Yeah.
you know, there was always a character that you'd buy a book if he was in or.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like again, because we're 90s kids, I started off, it was like Wolverine,
Yeah.
but everybody says Wolverine
Yeah.
from back then. But yeah, him and Batman. I've always loved Batman
Okay.
because I'll go even back to the like cheesy Adam West Batman. I love that stuff.
Yeah,
It's-
you did like Batman a lot more.
Yeah.
Like I like Batman just fine, but that's mostly because the writing's always really good. Because
Yeah.
I mean, it's their flagship.
Well, when we were growing up too, we were so lucky to have like, 89, we got Batman the movie.
Yeah,
And then we got, there was a bit of a resurgence there that got, the Adam West stuff shown on TV again. And then later on, Batman the Animated Series,
Mhm.
which was such a great show.
that's iconic. I mean,
Yeah.
if honestly, even if you don't like comic books that much, I think every kid, even kids now, have watched Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah. And even if you never did, you have to thank them
Mhm.
for at least doing, if it wasn't for Batman Animated Series, you wouldn't have all the other DC cartoons.
Yep.
But also you wouldn't have probably the Arkham video games
That's true.
because Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill
Mhm.
did the voices for those as well.
Yeah, I think everyone would agree that is Batman's voice, and I think
And Joker's voice.
and Joe.
Do you suffer from that queasy, drop-in cabin pressure airsick feeling? Well, you should, because of my handy-dandy radar disruptor. It's guaranteed to scramble all radar signals in the greater Gotham area.
Yeah, I don't think even going through history now, I don't think that's going to ever stop now. That is Batman's voice. It doesn't matter who else does them.
Yeah. Yeah. He did such a great job.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I guess for me, I always liked Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Wolverine got me into it, and
Mhm.
Spider-Man wasn't even that popular when I got into him.
Yeah.
It was it before the Carnage thing?
Yeah.
I think it
Maximum
was.
Carnage.
I think it was before that, because me and you played that Maximum Carnage game.
Yep.
And I want to say it was around the time of Venom.
Mm-hmm.
I know Venom was a big one, and then
Yeah,
I really-
Venom was around, but
Yeah.
yeah, the Maximum Carnage storyline hadn't hit yet.
Yep.
And yeah, Spider-Man wasn't as big, and it's so hard to say that now because how ubiquitous Spider-Man is.
Mm-hmm.
And Spider-Man has always been, to a point, Marvel's character. Like,
Yeah.
Superman is known to be DC.
Yep.
Spider-Man is kind of
I'd
Marvel.
argue that Batman. I mean, Superman too. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Superman, Batman, but I would argue that Batman is a bigger character than Superman.
Yeah, that's that is a conversation that could take all night.
I mean, it's true. And well, now we're getting into that. Superman is probably my favorite character of all time. Not necessarily because of his powers, which, anyone would be like, oh, he's white bread, he's boring.
I don't think so. I love Superman too. When I got started in 7th grade with all my friends were collecting comics, and I wanted to get into comics too, but I didn't have a lot of pocket money.
Yep.
So I had to be careful about it. And the two things that were coming out at the time were X-Men's Executioner Song storyline and the Death of Superman. And the Death of Superman was so big. And
we had like 3 different versions, I think, each kept in the plastic. I know I still have some in the back.
I have my original that my aunt bought me, and she bought me some of the Executioner Song, and she said, I'm keeping these till Christmas, but you know what you got and everything. And I did. But it was between those two storylines, and the X-Men won out.
Yeah.
But
well, growing up, we were more Marvel boys. Like as we got older, I think you too.
Yeah,
I became more of a DC fan.
Yeah, later on, I agree. Back when No Man's Land started, reading Wizard magazine. People remember what that old rag is. Found out about this whole No Man's Land thing, that there's going to be this huge cataclysm, earthquake. Nobody can get in or out of Gotham. And it sounded like a really cool idea for a story. And it's going to go on for like over a year, they said. And so I started picking that up. And at that time it was really hard because we didn't have a comic book store anymore. It folded up around that same time.
Okay. Yeah, we would have been in high school around then.
Yeah,
right?
I just graduated.
Okay. So yeah. Because I remember when it happened, and I think you told me about it. And you started getting me more into Batman.
Yeah.
And then following the DC. But I had stopped reading comic books at that time and thought they were for kids. And that's roughly around the same time too, maybe a year or two later, like I discovered The Watchmen, and then you told me about No Man's Land, and that they were making actual adult comics, which again, growing up, I mean, as a teenager, like you get to that stage, you're like, I'm fucking cool.
Yeah.
I'm a really cool guy, and I don't have time for that kiddie bullshit.
I've heard it go as it's the time when it's either comic books or girls. And you just start pushing the comic books away because you.
Sadly for me, I didn't get either. So.
But yeah, it wasn't that. It was much later I got back into Superman. It was actually a podcast I was listening to that got me back into it, because they were going from John Byrne's when DC had their Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they rebooted their whole backgrounds and everything of every character and everything, and they started fresh. So they're starting from there, that's Superman, all the way to Final Crisis. And I was listening to that and I was like, oh, this is actually really good stuff. And I started picking it up, found in back issues and dollar bins and things like that. And now I have a full run of that from John Byrne starting all the way to Death of Superman.
Well, the problem too with DC, like when we were kids, it was considered boring, and it was like the old man comics. But I kind of wish they would have fed into that a little bit more. Like, did you ever watch the show Young Justice?
Yeah.
Great show. Amazing. But they made the mistake of putting it on at 6 or 7 in the morning.
Yeah. And they never put it out later in the day or anything like that. I remember that.
They made really good toys for it. They made really like good everything, and it was a great show.
Yeah.
That and the Green Lantern show that was right after that was really good.
Yeah, I barely remember that. Yeah, I do remember, because it was like Cartoon Network was doing some kind of DC thing with them.
Yep.
Because, I think everything was owned, like Cartoon Network and DC Warner Brothers all owned it, so they could do that.
Yeah, and and that one was really good if you get past the computer generated art, because it's not my favorite style of art.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember that.
But the story was really good.
Yeah.
And same with Young Justice. And they brought Young Justice back years later, and they made it for adults now. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's on Max and it's really good. But I wish they would have realized that before and put it on.
It's the Icebreaker Show, yeah, we're repping the nerds. Comics, anime, and all those key words. From the pages to the screens, we're keeping it lit. Brian and Josh dropping knowledge, never gonna quit. We're talking superheroes, space, and samurai. Throw in a few mechs, watch them fly to the sky. It's a nerd fest, and you're part of the crew. Stay tuned for the next one, we got more to do. Talking nerdy to you, yeah, that's what we do. From the Marvel Universe to Dragon Ball Z too. Talking nerdy to you with a comic book flip. We're out, but we'll be back, so don't you dip. Lightsabers clashing, consoles flashing, geeking out on tech, yeah, there's no crashing. We're Icebreaker fam, and you're rolling with us. Next episode's gonna be another nerd rush.